Did you say an island off the coast of Eastern Washington?
Isn't there like an island off the coast of like Eastern Washington? Wow.
You did say Eastern Washington.
I did say Eastern Washington.
Welcome to the Nick's Boots podcast. I am your host, Shyler Mao, joined by Lucas Grassberger, Kelsey Lursbach. Thank you for joining us today. We are here to answer your Reddit questions. Some of these are, well, they're all good, but some of them have made me think a decent amount, which is a good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, we try and engage with the community. We do engage with the community. Our product is complicated. Boot world is sort of complicated. And sometimes we make it complicated. And so we're here to answer your questions and try and shed some light on some of the things that you may be wondering about. First question is pretty simple. And this, Lucas, you're the perfect person to ask this. Will Dr. Soles be available on Packer boots? I recently just put in my first order and basically wants to get the half soles.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
You should be able to do it. It shouldn't be a problem. We rolled it out a little bit slower. We've got some other Dr. Soles options coming too. But the Packer last should be easy enough. Our biggest issue with half soles in the past were actually the width of the toe on the sole not being wide enough.
Yep.
So the more narrow toe of the Packers last should be fine.
Yeah. So that was the reason for moving away from the Vibram versions is basically, especially like on Thurmans or, larger sizes with F or bigger widths, it didn't work. So, we've got a solution there, but yeah, I think that's a great suggestion and you'll see that in the coming weeks or so. Next question was, what are the leathers with the best hand feel? I guess that kind of depends on what you like to feel with your hands.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
No, it's true. Yeah.
Sensation is subjective, I think, especially in this realm. But I like a softer, I don't know that I necessarily prefer it for wearing.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, when I'm touching it, I like a little softness, suppleness, something that feels like not overly waxy, but has some kind of moisture to it. It doesn't feel dry. So for me personally, I really like the Spokane leathers are actually really excellent. Mm-hmm. They are less waxy than the Chrome packs, but have a more kind of supple, luxurious feel than maybe like some of the work leathers or something like that, which I think still feel great, but this one just feels almost velvety a little bit. That's the wrong word. Smooth, smooth and supple. Velvety, I guess, would kind of be like a waxed flesh, but which is a cool thing.
It's kind of got that
feel.
too on the wax.
Well, true on the waxed flesh side, it does. Yeah, absolutely, good point. I really like Shackleton.
Yeah,
I think Shackleton's very soft and supple as well. But again, I don't know that it's kind of a weird metric, right? Because like the Horween people talk about it, and they does it have a good hand? And that does matter. You do touch your boots when you put them on, that sort of thing. But definitely not the only factor, right?
Right.
How about you?
Yeah, I think those two for sure. I'd throw double stuff up there.
Yeah,
double stuff has a really nice feel to it.
Yeah.
It's waxy without being like you mentioned. Chrome pack, especially fresh from the tannery. Still in a roll. You grab it and you feel like you have to wash your hand afterwards because it's got so much oils in it, which a lot of that comes out, as it's going through the process and sitting and lasting and things like that. But the Wickett and Craig double stuff has got that nice waxy feel without being so much that it feels like the wax is literally coming off onto your hand. So I'd probably put that up there with those two.
Okay, perfect. This is the question that got me thinking. Why are Wickett and Craig options so expensive? As far as I know, the hides cost about the same or maybe even slightly lower when compared to something like Horween Chrome Excel or Wax Flesh when I buy them from different leather suppliers. There are other brands like Caswell and Borden who use very similar to Wickett and Craig leathers. Borden even has olive and burgundy double stuffed. No, they don't. So it's not exclusive to Nix, and they don't cost any more than the other leather offerings. Are the veg tan leathers just very hard to work with? Dublin is also veg tan and doesn't have the same upcharge, although Dublin is pretty supple. And naively, the thick and beefy work leathers seem like they'd be harder to last and work on, just based on what I know. 25 to 30% upcharge seems kind of high, but I'd love to learn more. Okay, so I don't know, exactly what other brands are doing, but for us, Wickett and Craig is like 50% more expensive than Horween, and Horween is like 40% more expensive than the work leathers. That's not like the total story there, because it obviously comes down to yields. And so work leather hides tend to be larger because they're usually vacuum dried instead of air dried, or they're pasted, which basically means they're put on like a glass pane basically and put through an oven, a very low temperature oven to dry them out. And then because they're on that pane or in the vacuum dryer, they are basically like held in place somewhat, and so they don't shrink as much. Whereas Horween and Wickett air dry, and so those they like stake them, they put them on toggles, and then they basically just run air through there, and they dry out, and they shrink quite a bit. So they'll be typically like 20 to 25% smaller. Now, like Horween, though, in particular, I'd say is a relatively clean hide. It's a very clean hide.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Horween does not use any hides that have brands on them, for example. And so the yields are, while the hide is smaller, the yields are actually relatively similar, and kind of like a number of boots that come out of that. But there's also some other variables, like you can be ordering different grades, and so some of these, I don't know, these are relatively smaller brands, like much smaller, and they may be ordering like overstock inventory at, and you might be ordering overstock inventory when you like are at Maverick or, Tandy, whomever. And so like, I don't know, they may just be priced to move, but for us, a Wickett and Craig hide is 50% more. So like I looked on some of these sites, and the one thing that stood out to me is like, so the Wickett was like more expensive than some calf options, which makes sense to me, sort of, because calf can also be expensive too, kind of depending where it's coming from. But you don't really know like how discerning are they in terms of like, what portions of the leather are they willing to use. We basically get like one boot per hide for the Wickets. Sometimes more, but for the most part, that's kind of what we get. Another thing I would consider is that most of these brands are typically just offering in the 5 to 6 inch range, and we have options that go up to 10 inch. We choose not to do major upcharges for larger shaft heights, and kind of spread that out amongst the different sizes. We could get more granular with that, and upcharge more for those. Kind of a long story short, for us, the Wickett is basically like, quick math in my head, like over 50% more expensive than a comparable Horween hide in terms of price and yield. And so I think it's odd. I look on some of these sites and the Horween ones are more expensive, which I think that's weird. I don't necessarily know that I want to say like the exact price per square foot, but the Horweens for us are substantially less expensive. And that may be because we can buy full drum loads, and maybe some of these other ones are not, because they're doing more limited runs. And I know, pricing obviously varies based on like the quantity. Maybe they're buying Horween through a distributor and they're direct with Wickett. I don't know. But there's no like chicanery here. What I mean? It's a pretty straightforward analysis where you're like, okay, how much leather does it take to make this boot? Okay, it's a full side of Wickett in our case, because most of our boots are larger, or more of our boots are larger than I'd say most other brands. And so like we have to kind of price it accordingly. there's a comment here about Dublin. Dublin is not that expensive. Dublin is just is in line with like CXL and Wax Flesh for us. So Wickett is more difficult to work with for what it's worth.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's important to note. I think across the board, the consensus back there is Wickett is probably the hardest leather to work with. Whether that's double stuff being, so stuff with waxes, it's hard for lasting, or the English bridle that we don't offer anymore, which is kind of a little bit drier than a lot of tannages. So we could have issues with splitting and things like that during lasting. Like our process of hand lasting is like they have to really wrench on those leathers, and you have a higher chance with Wickett, with veg tan in general, of tears and rips and things like that.
Yep.
With the way we do hand lasting. And veg tan is more prone to staining.
Yeah.
It's why, with some Wickett and Craig leathers, occasionally if there's a lug sole, we won't stitch through because we know oils and waxes will stain the top of the boot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more rework when it comes to veg tan.
Well,
also.
it's a good point, because it's also not as strong from a tensile standpoint. I don't think that really matters that much when it's on your feet, but when you're making it, like we pop way more vamps on Wickett and Craig than we do with other ones, and so that's literally where you're lasting it. You're pulling it over the last, and it rips, and so that's a factor as well. I'm also looking at some of these patterns from the other guys, and they're definitely simpler, and so that might be part of it as well. Like you're probably looking at fewer cuts of leather that are going into it, so the yields could be higher. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It costs us kind of what it costs. I may reach out to Wickett and be like, hey, what do you think here? But my expectation is like there's probably, these are smaller boots, in general. They're probably getting more boots per hideout and maybe are not as, I don't know. Maybe we are a little more discriminate in like what portions we're willing to use. And you never know, like, is everybody ordering direct and kind of on the same playing field as you are?
Right.
But but good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Good to kind of clear the air on that. But it's, leather just kind of costs what it costs for us. And then also, I did look on some of these, like, there's a mention here that double stuff is on there. That's not double stuff. That's like a Latigo. That's our standard Latigo offering, which has some similarities, but is not quite the same in terms of kind of how it's dipped afterwards. That's kind of just the way it is. But thanks for asking the question. Maybe you can take this next one, Lucas. Maxwell versus Overlander.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Go first pair Knicks, Maxwell and Overlander. So this question is asking what the difference between the Maxwell and the Overlander are. They're very similar. Biggest difference is the last. Maxwell comes on our Thurman last. Overlander comes standard on the H&W that you can order in the Thurman. Other than that, the Maxwell has that padded collar, and it comes with that single lift heel stack as opposed to the standard block heel stack. Those are pretty much the only differences. Otherwise, they're very similar boots. It's kind of, a lot of our boots are variations of each other to kind of show you all the options available. That way you don't have to click through a bunch of drop downs to customize it yourself. So I would just go based on how they look. If you want the Thurman toe, you can go with the Maxwell. If you want something in between, you can go to the Lace Up Build Your Own and kind of spec it out exactly how you want.
Yep. Yeah, good summary there. Question about half sole heel height. So 55 Station Masters, they want to go to the new half soles. I'd really prefer a 4-layer heel stack, but I'm not sure if I'd go with the classic height or moderate. I know Nick's recently started making the moderate heels with 4 layers, but will a half sole subtract another layer, or do they compensate for that now? Good question. We just talked about this.
We've been talking about this a lot.
We've been talking about this for years.
Yeah. There's so much. It's crazy to me. The heels feel like the most difficult part of the boots in terms of everything you change before getting to the heels affects what you can do with the heels in terms of last sole, the shank even. But for this question, if you go with the half sole, the heel stack, we are talking about going forward. We're going to be bringing in Dr. Sole heel heel caps.
To replace the Quabog.
Because the Quabog got discontinued by Vibram, and we couldn't find anything equivalent by Vibram to replace it with that had the metal washers we needed. Everything else was basically direct attach glue.
Yep.
So we're moving these Dr. Soul heel stacks. With that, because they're a little thicker, we are going to also move back to the 3-layer heel stack because the Dr. Soul one is a little bit taller than the Quabog. On this specific question, I was actually just talking to Mikey yesterday, and we're talking about specifically for half soles, still doing 4 layers. So you can compensate for that loss of height when you do a half sole.
Okay.
Because if you do a half sole, you don't have the full sole running through under the heel stack.
Right.
So your heel actually ends up getting shorter.
Right.
So I think the decision is we're going to do a 4-layer heel stack when it's a half
On the
sole.
half soles,
Yep.
and then 3 layers on the full soles.
Yep.
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 For,
that way,
for moderate height.
Yep. That way it is the same heel height no matter what sole you get. You don't have to, you won't be able to put them side by side and have varying heel heights all the way around. So we're tightening things up there. We're getting a standard put together because we'll have a heel cap that will work with every heel profile, which was the issue before. We'd have to change up the heel cap, which would change up the thickness, which would change up your height. It was a whole thing.
It's still a whole thing. But
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, kind of the short answer. It's like, in the past you would just like make it work, and so that obviously kind of resulted in some variation. And I think most people don't care about this, but some people really do. Yeah. And so you would be there'd be some discretion on the healer's part to like make sure the balance was okay. Whereas now, we're going to standardize it. And then also I think that if you want some customization that maybe is a little out of balance, we're going to be like, that's on you. You know what I mean? If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. You're an expert boot user and know what works for you. And, we'll kind of just trust you. But yeah, I mean, so that's the solution. So 3 for the full soles, 4 for the
half sole.
Soles.
Yes.
When is that starting?
So we've got the heel caps on order. Once those get in, we'll be able to use those as the standard offering going forward, and we'll be able to standardize everything else. Okay. It's crazy. I feel like I could do a 30-minute segment on the nuances of heel stacks. There's even based on how much of a shank there is, we have to do a logger and remove lifts instead of doing a moderate. There's a lot, and it all comes down to what the manufacturer sends us in terms of heel stacks.
Okay. Next question, what's the best boot for all-day wear if I'm on my feet constantly? I think it's a Honey Vibram Overlander, kind of in the arch of your choice. You could also go with, I think a wedge sole would obviously be kind of a very common choice in this situation, right? Especially if you're on hard surfaces. So I think it does kind of depend on the surface, but if you're going to be mixing surfaces all around, I've started wearing a Honey Vibram sole here in the last, 8 months or so, 6 to 8 months. I really like it. It's a significant difference over the black V100.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You really definitely notice it.
Yeah.
Because there's that trip, when we were in New York for the trade show, I wore my black. This was kind of the retirement of, not the retirement, but the rehealing of those. But those are a black V100, basically like an 8-inch urban logger, urban drifter. And my feet were killing it. Were killing me after that trip. I mean, I was literally walking
we walked
15 miles a day.
We did a lot of walking. And it's funny because I brought my Builder Pros because I was like, I'm going to wear the classics. And I felt the same way. I was like, what did I do?
Well, because you're walking on concrete all day.
Yeah.
And so that was the problem. And so if I'd had my Honey lugs, I think I'd been way, way better off. And it kind of depends on you as a human. You know what I mean? Like Lucas and I are bigger people, and so that puts more strain. And if you're lighter, I think it probably matters a little bit less. But if you're looking for a cushier, more comfortable sole, I think the Honey lug is definitely worth looking into.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good option, especially because you can do the 55 last and get some arch support with it as well. So you get kind of the best of both worlds, a little bit softer and some good arch support for all day wear.
What's coming up basically is this next question. What are some of the new things that are going to be coming out? We have got a lot. So we're going to have some different and maybe controversial arch profiles that we'll be launching here in the next few weeks. I'll be curious what the community thinks about that. Yeah, we're waiting for feedback on those, so I don't want to like, open that can of worms just yet. But so far, so good. It's been very positive. We've got some smaller stuff, so we're gonna have like a full, many more Dr. Soul options on the Soul side. We're gonna have some unit honey options as well, kind of echoing what I was just talking about, the comfort of the honey lug sole. We have got some lighter weight options coming out, especially applicable for summertime.
Yeah, good, like summer boots.
Try and bolster that time of year for us. I've got my leather trip coming up where we'll go out and visit the tanneries and basically look at samples and kind of plan out, the next year of leather launches. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we just sat down and planned out over 20, maybe 30 different samples we wanted to bring in to take a look at.
Yep.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah. So, some interesting dark browns, some more vibrant orangish browns, like tobaccos almost.
Couple pops of color, too.
Some color pops, gray. Yeah. So you'll see kind of I think a more unified palette from us in terms of these next launches. Like last year was kind of like the green year, I would say. And I think we'll be kind of going more neutral this year, but we will definitely always have some color pops for those of you the 10% of you that like that.
Got some more Wickett and Craig options coming in terms of some models that or silhouettes that we haven't previously offered in Wickett. Will be available in Wickett.
Yeah. We've got a lot of new stuff, so we're going to be hitting it pretty hard. Of course, we're going to be working with Carl again on I think a boot that you guys will really like.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Yep.
I'm really excited for that. A special new leather with that.
Yep. Some overdying coming in. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Weston, we're working with him as usual, and maybe in a greater capacity. Kind of celebrate the 5th year of the ND series.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And some other stuff that's kind of in the fire, but not fully baked yet. Mostly because we just are still kind of getting agreement with those other parties. But it'll be kind of a busy time. I think. Yeah, this arch profile will be interesting. I am excited about it.
Yeah,
it looks awesome.
It does. It came out really well. I was not. I've mentioned my hesitation. I wasn't sure if it'd be a good option, but once again, I'm eating my words. Once it got finished, I think we just always make good boots. Is the thing. Doesn't matter what we make; they're always good.
Yeah, it'll be a boot that, like, there are other things out there that have some similarities. This will just be kind of a higher quality version, basically, like a lot of things we do, right? So you'll kind of be able to get the best version of this kind of boot, and we'll be pushing that hard along with some of these Spokane leathers. I think are really awesome, we'll be interesting to see what you guys think about it. Kelsey, any questions you wanted to ask before we move on? No?
Nothing?
Tight-lipped? Really?
Wow, didn't even have a starter question for us?
Didn't even have a starter question. It was more of an interesting... You got it from AI, too.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what to say. I was having tech problems before this.
Oh.
Look what AI is doing to our workforce.
Seriously. I
No,
know.
it was actually just
They're
my
not self-sufficient anymore.
The headphones I was using just decided to not work anymore, so I had to scramble and find another pair.
Well, you're doing great.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, no questions.
Okay.
I'm in a lot of the meetings, so.
Yeah, so exciting stuff coming up. And maybe I need to get better pricing on Wickett and Craig. I don't know. I don't think so, though. You just never know how these guys are doing it.
I mean,
I'm like a little offended.
I know. I think you're onto something, though. I think it's, smaller quantities, so they're getting charged more for Horween is the thing that's happening there. But hey, if we can get lower costs on Wickett and Craig, I mean, it'd sell like crazy.
Well, yeah, I know, but I don't think that's the direction they're going in. So
I don't think that's the direction anyone's going in.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. Well, I will try not to take this personally on the Wickett and Craig front, but hopefully that explanation made sense. There's a lot of variables. I listed them.
If none of that made sense, it's
don't-
just because ours is better.
Well, I don't even, I don't know. I mean, there's freaking small boots. Like
Yeah.
these are just like 6.
No,
know,
it's I
6-inch
think
boots.
it's a great point. It's something that I don't think a lot of
3
people,
pieces of leather that go into them.
a lot of people realize. 8-inch, 10-inch boots, the yield drops dramatically compared to like 5-6-inch boots.
Yep.
So it makes a big difference.
Anyway. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you. And we really appreciate our customers. That's why we're here. But yeah, you know where to find me and Lucas. Reach out if you have any questions. And thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.